Welcome to Creative Corner, the segment where we delve into the vibrant world of art and culture, exploring the stories behind the creative minds shaping our society. And today we're going beyond the glitz and glamour of the stage to explore the fascinating world of performance art. From the emotional depth of a stage performance to the intricate planning and creativity behind the scenes, performance art is so much more than what meets the eye.
So in the world of performance art, every gesture, every line, every movement is a carefully crafted piece of a larger story. But what happens after the curtain falls? What challenges and triumphs define the lives of those who bring these performances to life? And so today, we're joined by an exceptional guest who has dedicated their lives to stage, and that is none other than Joshua Alabi. He is a visionary, producer, and of course, a CEO and creative director at Kininso Creative. There we go. Creative entrepreneur. Joshua, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Joshua,
you for inviting me. Good morning.
So I hear it's Kininso. Is that correct?
Kininso.
Kininso.
Yes,
What does that mean?
Judas, it's kill Yoruba, why don't you?
What does it mean?
It's okay.
Kininso is what is he saying?
What's he saying?
What are you saying?
So that's beautiful. So performance art, and they're performing, and then the thing is Kininso.
The interpretation.
Yes, interpretation.
Oh, I get it.
That's so genius.
Very
Yeah,
intense.
so it's about what are we saying? What do we have to say? Nigeria is a big country. We have many things to say. So how do we want to say it that it will make sense?
I've got a big question for you. Performance art, from what I remember as a child, National Theatre was a hub. It was like Christmas to go to the National Theatre. It was such a beautiful structure and everything, and the people meeting a performer was like meeting Michael Jackson. Does that still happen? Is it still as big and elaborate an experience as it used to be in the 80s/90s, in the early noughties? Not so sure.
Not anymore, sadly. With the advancement of film and technology, live art has, received that huge decline over the years. But of course, I think generally, any country without a vibrant economy, theatre would find it difficult to exist there.
And that's what's happening in Nigeria.
Yes, it's about, marketing, about visibility, and also pocket share, mind share.
You put it so aptly, because when you think about the other countries that appreciate, stage performance and productions and performance art, countries like the Britain, which is the UK, which has like a very large, audience, and they invest well in stage performance and performance art as well. When you think about France or even Russia and all the other European countries, Eastern European countries, and even in Asia, those countries are countries that have their economy is viable, it's thriving, and so persons have enough, disposable income to want to go see a stage play and really invest or indulge in such activity. And so it makes me wonder about yourself, a producer who's creating innovative stage productions, and you're going in performance art. Does that deter you? What are the challenges then do you face in financing your projects, getting actors, directors, stage
or even
stage
just being
design,
inspired to
just being
continue.
inspired to even continue?
I think the inspiration is always there, even though sometimes you're also inspired by these challenges, and art is always about reinventing oneself and reinventing the stories, and how else do we want to say it? But of course, while you were even talking about countries that are viable economically, there's also some countries have found it to become as a tool for resensitization, for awareness, for social impact and development. So you'd find countries like Germany, like the Netherlands, of course, like France, that theater, stage plays, performance art has been inculcated into, is now part of the curriculum. So every child from early years, so they call it early years theater, so from age 0, 1 until, whenever, you have to study theater, you have to go to the theater to see plays. And the difference is clear.
Yeah.
But coming back to your question or questions, it's such a challenge. But I think one thing theatre producers, theatre directors in Nigeria, one thing we've made up our mind to do is the fact that with or without the people, with or without the government, we'll make theatre. So what we've been creating over the last few years are performances that are flexible enough to be taken to spaces where people are. Right, so if the people do not come to the theatre, let's take theatre to them. So, for example, you find our own space in Ikeja. We have a creative hub. We make theatre there. It's not a theatre space. You go to the Terra Culture just at the lawn outside.
Yes, the lawn outside.
Just beside the restaurant. You make theatre there, and you go to several other restaurants around Lagos where people gather, where people sit to eat. So that's really about how do we make this work? Because as part of our research, several millions of Nigerians do not know that theatre exists.
Yeah, that's actually very true. I was going to say, you mentioned all these little hubs, but then again, let's go back to the original hub, the National Theatre. It seems derelict right now. It seems that there's no attention from the government there. At one time there was, but they wanted to sell it. If they had, would that have brought theatre back? Would it have been to the advantage of practitioners? Privatization. Do we need to privatize theatre in Nigeria to perhaps maybe touch the fringes of what Broadway is?
Yes, that's, I think, 1% of this entire conversation. But if that was the case, if that were to be the case, if they had, succeeded in selling off that entity, theatre would maybe have died.
It would have died?
Yes.
Oh, and you have to elaborate on that.
Yes, I am saying this because we have to look at theatre, firstly, as a tool, of course, as a product, right? You invest in a business, you want to make some money. But sadly, that's not the case with theatre. Countries that have successfully made theatre a homegrown industry, and a successful industry, they've invested some certain amount. So aside from the national, let's use the UK for example. So you have the National Theatre, right? You have the National Theatre of England, you have the National Theatre of Scotland, and you have you have the National Theatre of Wales as well. But you would see how government has invested and supported independent producers and programmers and companies to own their own spaces. It's like the media industry is buoyant because you have spaces, you have News Central, you have several other stations. So you want to make
Thanks
theatre.
for not mentioning.
Definitely. So you have other spaces. You want to make theatre a business, but there's nowhere to consume theatre. So how do you even make a business out of it? So I think the first thing is for the government. Yes, the National Theatre is there. It must be. Now with what the Bankers Committee and the federal government with what they're doing, we're waiting. We're hoping that it's in the favor. It's all in favor of those who make theatre. But it's also important that while that is going on, private investors, private individuals are also encouraged and invested in to make more theatre spaces. That's when theatre would be successful. That's when we can count, look at, make better products and then make profit. If not, the National Theatre can do nothing because there's just the main bowl, which sits about, I think, almost 5,000. There's the cinema halls. There used to be the cinema hall, I think 1 and 2. Now it's been broken into cinema hall 1, the big one, and then 2 smaller ones, and then the banquet hall. And then smaller spaces. But we have, in Bariga alone, there are over 5,000 theatre companies. Within that local government. Yes, over 5,000 theatre companies.
So theatre is thriving underground. Who is going to these small theatres? Who are? Right?
The community.
The community.
Yeah.
Is there money being made?
It just took me back to Jos, or rather to Kaduna State, during my time in Kaduna. So there was a small, and also in Jos as well, there's a thriving, there's a thriving creative economy that is there in Jos. And also, surprisingly, Kaduna, Angwanrimi, Angwa, Sunday, Sabo, all those outskirts of the town. My cousin was a b-boy, which is, the b-boying dance, which was on the Olympics at the time.
Although that was not a sport in the Olympics. It was
can't be tumbling on your head as if you can tumble on your head.
You were saying.
But anyway, but seeing that and also being able to see people do spoken word and, and one-man show and one-woman show and performances, and young people were there. They were paying 500 naira, 700 naira, 1,000 naira, and then you get, I think, a free bottle of Zobo and Chin Chin. And it was fun. And this was in Kaduna State. I'm talking 2013, 2014. I would never forget it. And just watching it, and I'm like, goodness me, I am wasting so much time in Lagos. Just seeing how these people are having this balance and value for life. They're not going to a bar, or they don't think there's no mall at the time in Kaduna, and so that was their own side attraction. And everyone's phone is put down, no one's recording. They're really enjoying themselves and having a wonderful time. There was a book club behind the corner, and so it begs to ask the question about those on the ground acts and all those underground performers. They start young with that passion, but at the end, it always fizzles out. You know, I would say, for example, my cousin, it always fizzles out. It would die. How then, without the involvement of the government, because hey, the government, how then can private sector, how then can individuals, production companies continue to groom this talent and still keep them interested, or what's the word? Besides interested, just to still keep that fire going. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, and I'll still come back to the government.
Yeah.
You know that Nigeria is a stubborn country in every ramification. When we're not compelled, I mean, of course, the government cannot do everything. However, it's part of the government's mandate to find a way for the corporate sector to support theatre. Like the corporate sector is now supporting, you know, the construction of roads and the building of schools or funding of certain schools. That's how the government is able to, you know, so far in the last few years, several festivals, individuals, creative organizations, they've been able to, of course, penetrate into the private sector to fund their festivals, to fund their project, but it's only been on a projectized format. You know, you have this annual festival, and the corporate or the corporate organization gets to fund that festival once a year, while there are several other projects going on, several other initiatives, several other festivals. So I think with a structure from the Ministry of, you know, Creative Economy, Arts and Culture, if they could create a structure where it could be through tax rebates or something that the corporate world is made to invest into the creative sector, just as, you know, you have banks doing with Nollywood now. It's that mediation. Okay. So I think as the stage industry, that's what we need, that sort of mediation, because not everyone is able to walk into a corporate company, corporate organization, you know, provide value or clarify the kind of value that you're bringing to the table. Of course you are, but there are levels to these things.
I've got a very interesting question for you. You know, coming off of something that you said earlier about the thriving on the ground
5,000
theatre companies in Bariga alone. I remember seeing the Wole Soyinka's Lion
and the Jewel.
And the Jewel at National Theatre, and it was a big thing back in the 80s, but there was just one forum, and that was the forum. It was big. Now we have 5,000 local bodies who are interested in theatre, and it's not making that much of a sound. I didn't know that they existed. What are we missing out here? Why is that big disparity? One firm making so much noise, 5,000 in Bariga alone, and not much being heard about.
5,000 is a huge number.
It is, and I know because we have the association. We have them in Surulere, we have them in Bariga, we have them in Festac, we have them all across Lagos, and of course, not just even in Lagos, across the country. So we found a way to try to connect with each other and to work with each other independently, you know, and that's our own way of supporting each other and developing the industry, because we believe that with marketing, with visibility, with, I mean, not proper PR, but at least to the level at which we're able to do it, it will change something. So you talk about this plays, I mean, I could easily count the biggest plays in the last 10 years. And saying I can easily count means that there's not a lot of them. But you go into other countries, and it's not about the comparison. It's really about, from the outside, a lot of people believe that Nigerian theatre, the stage industry, it's really thriving. But it's because they only get to see 0.1% of the quality of the work that we make. Musicals and theatre companies like Kininso, because we tour every year, and we make sure we're in Europe or we're somewhere in Africa. So people believe that's what's happening. There's always big theatre, interesting works going on, I mean, all over the country. I think, I mean, generally, it's really about the money, right? With with the advancements of technology, with the way branding and marketing goes now, you want to make a play and you want to make your profit in return. You have to spend double or triple of what you're investing in the production into marketing. That's the only way to make it back. So it's really, really about the money, even at the community level.
Did they get that marketing in the past? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they got that marketing in the past.
Because they had the funding.
Yes, they had the funding. And in times where they didn't have that funding, there wasn't so much distraction. Like the times of the Ogunde, the Duroladipo, as you mentioned, in the 70s and the 80s, even in the 90s.
80s,
there wasn't
70s, I'm not that old.
Trying
to make me older.
Yeah, at that time, there wasn't distraction of social media, or Nollywood wasn't, huge. It wasn't thriving.
Huge, yeah.
So theater, performances, and concerts, of course, that's the only thing we could feed off to improve our social life. But now there's so much. So we all have to compete. And to compete and thrive in that space, even at the community level, you still need some sort of funding to... I'll give you one last example. We run a festival called KIFT. The festival is dedicated to age 2 to 18. So we make works and bring international performances and workshops from across the world for age 2 to 6, from 7 to 12, and so on. And sometimes we have to pay some schools to bring their children to watch theater and to learn workshops.
Say that again?
Yes, sometimes
we have to pay for their involvement.
Yes, for them to bring 200 children to enjoy, to support their development. Of course, some schools in Lagos, they appreciate the arts and they know the impact on the child's development.
Creativity.
So you can imagine where we are.
I have to ask about, the advent of social media, particularly the advent of streaming platforms and the movie industry, especially with new Nollywood being on streaming platform. Has that had any impact in the creative space, especially for performance art? Has it been difficult because of this, because of now the proliferation and the advent of these platforms made it difficult for you to hire talents, into your performance art and into your piece, whether stage play or musicals, whether it's actresses, actors, just what has it been like, especially for hire and just the impact of it?
Yes, thank you for saying that, because I'm currently having to handle a certain episode.
Right.
Yes, it has had its negative and positive impact. And starting with the negative impact, you talked about hiring now. Yes, people we get to hire to perform in stage plays, who will be paid moderately, now want more than the moderate amount, because when it's compared to a project for TV or film, the gap is different. It's really wide. So it's really affecting hiring on the part of crew and actors, and also even on the audience part. People now feel great to sit at home and watch what they have to watch from the comfort of their homes. People now do not always feel the need to want to walk out to go all the way when they calculate transportation and everything to see theater. But on the positive side, it's also good for us in a certain way. The fact that theater actors now, are now, getting popular, getting famous on TV, on streaming platforms, it's helping the theater industry little by little, because now people want to see their face on stage, right? So you have people like Moshood Fatah, who's who's one of us, and Uzamaka, lots of them who are doing interesting, plays, who are doing interesting films. So they're feeding off, we're able to feed off their popularity. It's a synergy, their popularity and their work on screen. We're able to feed, use that as part of our marketing for the work, but it's still at a very low pace.
But you can't converge all of those now, can you? How can you converge performance art and social media, for instance, which would actually be helpful, I'm thinking, but I just can't find
the correlation between the two?
Correlation, yeah, that's a
leverage of social media?
How can you leverage on social media to make performance art louder?
Yeah, it's possible in many ways. And for us, we're thinking people at a hub, we're always thinking, what's the next thing? And of course, since I think 2018, we've been on this conversation. How can we leverage digital technology generally, not just social media, to advance the work we do in the arts? In 2020, we tried something called home theater. And we took 20 of the plays we had done in the past, and picked certain excerpts and we filmed them professionally in a very, very good way. 2 minutes, 5 minutes excerpts in a way that each show could stand on its own. We didn't want to make a theater show, we didn't want to make a film, we wanted to make something in between. And we made about 25 episodes of those, shared on social media, on YouTube, on all the platforms, Instagram, and it was very good. I mean, it was successful partly because we were all at home. We wanted to consume something. You know, we had all the time in the world. However, we didn't stop. We continued our research. And in 2022, we had concluded our research on how we're able to stream theater, make some sort of mixed reality digital theater, not just stream to people in Nigeria, but across the world. But we found it, but we didn't have the money. Then we found a collaborator from the Netherlands who had been thinking of something like this as well. So we collaborated. And in 2022, 2023, early last year, we made a work called Dear Beloved Friend. And it's the first digital mixed reality theater performance from Africa. And it was so loud, so we could stream to the Netherlands, we could stream to Denmark and other parts of Europe. And just as you could decide after the show to walk into the cinema to see a film, we made it that way. So anyone could walk to the
So that's taking
to the
advantage
theater.
of these platforms right now. But you also said something which I also want to jump on now, the international influence. Fela is a Broadway show. It makes millions outside of Nigeria. What do they owe the Nigerian space, the Nigerian theater space? Taking our culture, taking our character, taking everything and showcasing it outside of Nigeria. And we're left here, we're like, yeah.
They owe us nothing.
They owe us nothing.
Yeah. Fela was here some years ago.
And there's our story. It's our story to tell and not theirs to stage.
Yes,
I mean,
but
you
they
said-
got the permission.
Fela was here years ago, but on profit. They also earned from that note.
Yeah.
So they're ripping not just the character, not just the
Our
story,
story.
not just the legend,
But
but
also
also our
our-
money as well, because they're coming to sell it back to us. It's our story. You're not worried, but I'm worried. Why aren't you worried?
Yes, I'm worried, but I've moved away from being worried to doing something, right? And I say they owe us nothing because yes, for them it's a business venture. Of course, it's about the art, it's about the culture. If we're to continue this conversation in this direction, we would say so much about Woman King and those movies. They are all our stories, right? It's not just in Nigeria, but across Africa. But people like me, I do not want to wait until they come tell the story, so I'll take the story to them. And that's why in my conversation, I'm always talking about how much we're collaborating, how much we're making work, how much we're touring. This is the space, so we either have to decide to do something,
Right.
or
I must say that that art or performing art has evolved. When you look at the history of it, there was a time where there were cultural troupes that would go from one state to another, one village to another, one community to another, and they would do displays and tell the stories and folktale. It's now evolved over time. But do you think that the performance art and the creative industry has moved with the time, putting into concept just the what you did with that stage play with the Netherlands or the group in Netherlands? And also, two, I noticed that all of the major plays happen only during the festive period, Christmas, and is that, do you think that that's enough? Because if it happens only during this period, and is it catered to the IJGBs then?
no. And of course, I think we all know why more people produce during the festive period.
Why? I don't
It's
know.
because, that period people want to go out with families and friends. People want to spend money.
Make
people,
experiences.
Yes, exactly, make experiences. So that's why you find more plays during Easter or during Christmas or New Year, because the belief is that that's when people want to come out in huge numbers to consume performances, to see theater. Of course, that's not a good model. We cannot survive based on that.
Okay.
However, there's still a lot going on all through the year, from January until December, but you don't find them on the big stage. Because the big stage that we have, even though we don't have so much, they're so expensive.
Cost.
Super.
Why, please, do I have to pay for, I have a family of 3, almost 100,000
That's as a family of three is already complaining. Look at that.
to see a Nigerian play. And don't forget her question about the traveling.
Just traveling and
sorry about that.
evolving.
Let's do that one first, actually.
The traveling theatre is not, it's still happening. Some small companies, but ultimately, when you look at this, the state of security in the nation, and you look at, because I said earlier, theatre can only thrive as much as the country
is thriving itself.
Yes. So when you look at security, so many people, for us, we've toured across Nigeria, but the last tour across Nigeria we had was in, I think, 2019, 2020, earlier. Since then, we couldn't go on. So our tour has been restricted to Lagos only. And if you find companies in Benin and in those spaces, that's how they've been able to do it. Security, lack of funding, and of course, as I said, the distraction of social media, the fact that people have so much going on, so much to do. So theatre isn't in our system, isn't in our psychology as a people yet.
Okay.
It's only seen as a product for the privileged. So until we do more, we receive more support across different levels.
Somehow you just did something. You sort of
segued into.
You just agreed that the plays during the festive period are for IJGBs.
Yeah, the privileged. You said.
The privileged,
which means it costs a bit of a stipend, and I might not be able to afford it. So real quickly on the cost, real quickly.
The cost remains the cost because the country, everything is expensive. The spaces are expensive. Putting up lights, putting up costumes, getting technicalities, sound, and it's super expensive. And I tell you, it is really expensive. So no Nigerian theatre has been able to get back all its capital from gate takings. None.
Well, Joshua, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Joshua Alabi, he is a visionary producer and the CEO and creative director of Kininso Creative. Kininso, what are you talking about? You're watching Breakfast Extra right here on News Central TV. Stick around. Coming up next, we will finally bring you the dailies for today. Don't go anywhere.